You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So today, sort of continuing on. Now, I had texted you. I should clarify this now because this is something that I wanted to bring up. And, of course, get a few other housekeeping things out of the way before we get into our top 5 favorite Force powers, which, of course, we thought, again, with this whole Journey to Ahsoka thing, Monday that we did top 5 favorite Jedi?
Yes.
Yes, I'm starting to lose track now with all this stuff. But
trust me, I get it.
That's the danger, by the way, of actually pre-planning a lot of these shows, because I'm living with all these titles now for a long time that now I'm starting to get everything mixed up. So, okay. So, Monday, we did top 5 favorite Jedi. Tonight, we're going to be talking about our top 5 favorite Force powers. And this, of course, is leading into the Journey to Ahsoka, what's the next one? It's not Journey Part 1, is it? Yeah, what are we talking about Monday? Is it?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, right, because August 23rd?
3rd.
Yeah, see, gotta love it when I prepare for these shows, everybody. That's why I got Daryl here, right? And Ronaldo when he's on. But yeah, I mean, the thing that's cool about this is that we're trying to do these episodes leading up to the Ahsoka series, which, of course, when the Ahsoka series comes out, we will be reviewing it. But the thing that I was texting you about that I think you questioned, you didn't really understand, was one of the benefits that comes from being a member. If you join our buymeacoffee.com membership and you join as a Padawan at $5 a month, or a Jedi Knight is $10 a month, or a Jedi Master at $25 a month, one of the things that you get for all that is exclusive content. There's videos that we plan to make that are available only to those members, the ones that actually support us every month. And one of the ideas that I had that we can begin, because we just did our top 5 favorite Jedi on Monday, is an exclusive. If you join, and right now, of course, David, he's one of our monthly supporters. But if you actually do this, then one of the videos that we plan to make is our top 5 favorite Sith Lords. So it's kind of like the other side of the top 5 favorite Jedi, but you got to at least do the $5 a month thing to support. And then, of course, we also have our Discord that is available. There's all kinds of things on there. I mean, there's obviously all the talk about Star Wars and things about upcoming shows and stuff like that. But then there's also just general conversation topics. There's a section that's another benefit, of course, of being a monthly member, is there's a section just for you guys. And then, just anything. There's even a channel where if you guys want to play Call of Duty with me, I'm on there almost every night. So if you hop on our Discord and go into the Call of Duty channel that's in there, you'll probably find me and maybe 1 or 2 other people. So David's with us. Hi, David. And so, yeah, I think that we can, start segueing now into our actual topic of the night is top 5 favorite Force powers. So the first thing that I got to ask, because you did do the top 5 favorite Jedi, and David, I hope you heard that whole thing about how, so far you're the only one that's going to get access to this, but our top 5 favorite Sith Lords, because you're actually a member and support us month to month. But what I want to know from you, Daryl, is what made you actually switch gears from, more of a character-driven top 5 to this kind of thing, where it's, I guess, like an elemental thing, right? It's a top 5 favorite Force power thing. Yeah, it's like ability, attribute, that kind of thing. What, in this Journey to Ahsoka that we're pursuing, I think it would actually be good for our audience that's watching this. And by the way, I want to welcome our Twitch viewers as well. I never want to forget you guys that are watching us on Twitch, because we only recently started streaming on Twitch again, and already, there's people that are following us on that. So I definitely want to encourage, if you are on Twitch, chat in, because we can see that. We're streaming both to YouTube and Twitch tonight, so. But for our YouTube and Twitch viewers, anybody else is really seeing this, what actually made you choose this?
Couple things. I mean, number one, force powers are just cool. I mean,
Well,
everybody.
yeah.
It's kind of one of the reasons why a
right.
lot of people love Star Wars is just the force powers. Of course, different people kind of have, I don't want to say the ability, but a lot of people favor certain force powers more than others. And then, in our journey to Ahsoka, we noticed that Jedi, like I said, Jedi kind of favor certain force powers over the others. So do some Sith Lords. So as we get journey to Ahsoka, I'm sure we're going to see more as far as what Ahsoka's able to do, and then of course the new villains, what they're going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And then, I think it's just a fun thing because like I said, who doesn't like force powers?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, and honestly, when people are doing the more water cooler type discussions, or you're getting together with your friends, and those of you who are talking Star Wars, yeah, this is one of those, what I would call almost like debate topics too, where people like to really get into the weeds on these things and illustrate it. Because also, don't forget that there's a lot of force powers, and that's one of the photos that you see, and I always point the wrong way. This way, where you see Luke using Force Lightning. This obviously is an expanded universe thing that, is now branded Legends. But, and Peter Griffin's with us too, by the way. And cheers to you, my friend. You
also,
see...
though,
Oh, go ahead.
Well, also, we've seen more force powers as series have come about, because, if we were focused on the original trilogy, you really only got a few of them.
Yeah, it's true.
But as we got the prequels and now the sequels, and then of course watching a lot of the new
the Disney
TV
Plus
shows
stuff. Yeah,
like now you're starting to see even more, and you're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that either. So it makes it a little bit more interesting now.
Well, it's true, and that's one of the things. And depending on our mood, sometimes we're more critiquing these things, sometimes we're applauding it, where you get a thing to where, as content is being created, they're expanding the force powers quite a bit. And they were doing that in the expanded universe, but because that was limited more to the novels and comics and things like that, it wasn't quite as impactful as when they started doing it, when Disney bought it, right? So now you got the sequel trilogy. You have things where, I forgot the technical name of the power, but basically when Kylo stops that blaster bolt in midair, that's a particular name. It's funny, in going along with this too, one of the things that I wanted to do, because, and I don't, certainly, before we get into this, I want to know how you formulated or came up with your top 5. But essentially, when I was coming up with mine, a bunch of stuff obviously rolled off the top of my head, right? Probably, like, I'm sure what happened to you. But what I decided to do was actually go on StarWars.com or whatever and actually look up, like, what are all the force powers? Because I'm sure there's a gang of them, and there are. I mean, there's like 50 or 60 of them.
Yeah.
Like a ton of them. It's insane. And, some of them, what they're doing, like in the case of that Kyler Blaster Bolt thing, right? They're essentially, like they're basically giving names to things that we already know. And in other cases, there's just, I don't know, there's like stuff that I'm like, wow, that's really a thing, huh? I mean, but I would encourage you guys, if you're putting your own top 5 lists, and certainly what I would love for you guys to do, honestly, is to chat those in. Those of you who are watching live, and we got Bruce with us on Twitch. In fact, Peter also texted something that I want to do, but I want to put this up because we love our Twitch viewers, right? So Bruce is like, hello, hello. Hey, what's going on, Bruce? We're really glad that you're watching us over there on Twitch. And then Peter, he's like, what's your kill death Warzone 2.0? 15 a game? Oh, just kidding. To be honest, although if there was a group of people that actually wanted to start playing Warzone, I would do it. But I found a lot of problems in Warzone. Mostly, honestly, I stick with a lot of the multiplayer stuff. I'm still kind of a fan of Call of Duty's whole multiplayer thing. I mean, the Warzone thing's cool. I do kind of like DMZ though. I've warmed up to that one. To me, DMZ is somewhat correcting some of the problems that Warzone has. But you know, either way, you join me in that chat, and we'll be playing some games. But when you came up with your thing, and before you do that, Peter's got this chat in. Grogu's healing, new, or did Legends have it as well? That's a good question, because that was something that came up when we were discussing the whole Rey thing, right? When in Rise of Skywalker, when she did that whole Force healing thing. And I had brought up that was actually a Legends thing. So, obviously, the Grogu thing happened before the Rey thing, and, everybody is pretty much... they were talking about, oh, maybe they did that to try to, I guess, not necessarily retcon, but lend credence to the whole thing, right? So it came up in The Mandalorian, and Grogu did the Force healing thing, and then I think they wanted to reinforce that when Rey did it. But actually, yes, Peter, they did do that quite a bit, honestly, in the expanded universe, now Legends. He goes on to say, I'm sure the Night Sisters could heal, but probably at a cost. Yeah, there was something... Oh, man. It's been a minute since I've read the Legends versions of them, right? Because now I've got the Clone Wars and Rebels versions of them in my head. But yes, they did. And actually... So the Night Sisters were still somewhat of a Legends thing, but it was really the Dathomir witches that were more... kind of the Legends version of the Night Sisters in a sense. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different... That's what's really interesting, right? Is there's a lot of things from the expanded universe that both Lucas and Disney ported over to what we now know as, these collection of Force powers. But the StarWars.com reference that I made, they actually did do a lot of combining all of stuff from canon, Legends, stuff like that, and just more or less cataloged it. And they also illustrated too, like, here's the first appearance of it, here's other canonical appearances of it. So that was pretty interesting too. So from your standpoint, when you were coming up with your list, what was that coming from? I mean, did you just, come up with your 5 favorites? Did you consult anything? Did you, Did you do it like 5 minutes before we went on? Did you? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I kind of like base my thing on, like, once again, almost kind of what I did with choosing my favorite Jedi.
Okay.
I just kind of based it on what I would probably use.
Yeah, like what you wanted to do. Like if you were a Jedi or whatever, this is what I would do.
Yeah, exactly. Like these are the things that I probably would utilize the most. But I mean, there are like a bunch of them, and some that I didn't even know was I didn't even know were Force power.
Oh, I know. And looking at
like
that StarWars.com thing.
Well, the thing that you've seen it in movies, like for example, the whole because we've seen it twice. We've seen it with Obi-Wan, and we've seen it with Luke when they cut themselves off from the Force. Yeah. That's actually a Force power.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, I didn't even... and when you think about it, I guess it kind of also would have to be, because how else would you cut yourself off?
Well, I mean, it's almost like I don't know. I mean, I guess I could see where you're going,
like, you just don't use it. But
well, that's it, right? I mean, it's, I guess...
because they can't...
Do you employ the Force to cut yourself off? I mean,
yeah, because essentially, like, if you... we always thought it was like, okay, like a muscle memory thing, like if you don't use it, you'll lose it type thing, which
Mm-hmm.
is partially true. But the other part is like, if you think about it, when Ray's like, I couldn't, when she was doing that whole thing, when she was looking and she's like, okay, what do you see between it all? Like the light, the dark,
Yeah.
but I didn't see you. She's like, well, if the force is in all living things, how are you absent from it? No
Well, but
different than
here's
Sidious.
a question
They
for you
couldn't
then.
find Sidious the same way. So,
No, well, they couldn't. Well, yeah, I guess kind of. That's yeah. That is there is. Well, but I don't know if see. There's a difference to me though between masking yourself from the Force and cutting yourself off from the Force. Where Sidious, I
mhm,
think, was employing more of masking himself,
true.
whereas Luke and probably Obi-Wan, although there was a little bit of vagueness, I think, in that whole thing. But with Luke, it was very definitive in The Last Jedi, right? It was like, no, I cut myself off from the Force.
Mhm,
And I I don't know if you really would consider that a Force power, because I mean, do you have to use the Force to cut yourself off from the Force? It's almost like it's more like an absence of it. But again, you do bring up a good point, though. I mean, if the Force is permeating all living things and everything else, it's almost like you would need to like block that with some sort of a power. Although
mhm,
the Force is a living entity, as it's implied, right? The Force
mhm.
seems to have a will, and that will carries through various events or things like that. Um, it's almost like, could you use the Force to cut yourself off of it? I mean, it would just seem counterintuitive or productive or whatever. But you know, I mean, that's another.
Ano
We do
Another topic.
periodically, yeah, and it's true, and we
Is it
do periodically, like we've done the balance of the Force thing, which is like this wildly popular. Like we got thousands of views off of this thing, but hey, we can use a few more views and subscribers. Maybe it's time to balance of the Force part 2. But let's get to our list. And of course, we start off with you, and you're at number 5. You basically have the whole Force Ghost, Force Spirit thing. So
Mhm.
explain
Yeah,
yourself.
the Force Ghost thing is really cool, just on the simple fact of like not only so there's a couple of ways because on one hand you can actually give yourself over to the Force
Yeah,
willingly,
right.
or you could be cut down and then still become one with the Force. Um, and I like that because it allows really your presence to still be around for your loved ones and friends and things of that nature. So whether, I mean, unlike in real life, once you're gone, you're pretty much gone as far as in your physical form and being able to just converse with people.
Yeah, you ain't
At least in
appearing to
this,
anybody. Yeah.
yeah. But at least in this case, you literally can do that. And you can go anywhere. I mean, you're pretty much limitless. Like you can just pop up whenever you want to, and
Well, here's the
you
thing,
know,
though, and I should address this. I actually This is one instance where I think I prefer the expanded universe version of this because there was an expiration date on that. So, one of the first scenes in Heir to the Empire, which as we all know is Timothy Zahn's episode 7, pretty much, right? Um
hmm
he pretty much was saying to Luke, like it sort of opens with this in a way where he appears to Luke. It's some number of years after Return of the Jedi. In fact, it's probably close to what now is like the Mandalorian time period, like about 5, 6 years, something like that. And it might be a little sooner. It's been obviously years since I've read this, but it might have been as soon as like a couple, 2, like 3 years or something. But it's kind of, some time has passed or whatever. And Obi-Wan appears to Luke and has a conversation with him and basically says to him, you know what? This is pretty much going to be the last time that I can appear to you because you basically have to exude a certain amount of energy, strength, or whatever, and it's like it's kind of like there was a reason that he was there. He was guiding Luke. He was doing the will of the Force, all that stuff, and then he was just going to be one with the Force at that point, where he could not, in other words, he could not manifest himself physically like a Force ghost. And I actually thought that was cool. I like that idea. Now, of course, the Rise of Skywalker flirts with this in a way, because you do have a lot of them were disembodied voices. I mean, it wasn't like anybody appeared to Rey in a Force ghost form. You know, she heard Obi-Wan in episode 7, you know, Rey, these are your first steps or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
and then, of course, in The Rise of Skywalker, you know, they were all talking to her before she vanquished Palpatine. So there is that, too, you know. But I did like the expanded universe of the, look, you can't just do this forever, in other words.
Yeah, well, I think I kind of like the fact that you can kind of always pop up, and I think you should be able to, because once again, it's like once you become a part of the living force, I mean, why are there limitations at that point? Like
Well,
it makes
because
more sense to me.
it's more that you're manifesting. You're always part of the living force, but it's your ability to communicate with the living, because you have the stages. And even canonically, you know, without the expanded universe, they still support this somewhat, because it wasn't like Obi-Wan appeared to Rey as a Force ghost. He was a disembodied voice.
Well, that
Qui-Gon was
makes
a
sense though,
disembodied voice.
because
And that's right.
that makes sense though,
And
because she
that's
wouldn't know
fine.
them anyway.
Well, that's
No, but I'm
true.
just saying, like, she
Well,
would know
yeah.
them. I
I
mean,
mean,
like, some weird old dude just pops up and like, who the heck are you? Like, you know, I mean, that's why it
well,
made
but
more
I mean,
sense.
if
Like
you
when
think
Luke
about
did
it,
it,
if you're
like,
just talking to him, like you're hearing voices, now you don't even have a frame of reference. I mean, at least if you pop up, I can see you. It's a little bit more.
but
If I
she's
just hear
kind
a
of used to
voice,
the force, kind of. I think she's kind of used to the force in a way, like more or less talking to her. It just may not be as clear, but I think that was just a motivating factor. Of like, okay, you know, and it's like I said, she came in contact with Luke's lightsaber, so that kind of, which that's a whole nother thing, which I
well, yeah, there's
did,
a
you
lot,
know,
and I mean, because
that's
you could
there's the
say the same thing
questions
about
on that.
Anakin, because okay, I mean, Anakin true was Luke's father. I mean, you could say that, but I mean, it wasn't like, you know, you really knew what he looked like. I mean, see, it made more sense with the whole Sebastian Shaw thing, because that was sort of like Anakin became the Force ghost as he appeared when he was older.
Hmm.
But they retconned that, obviously, Lucas did, and made it
Hmm.
to where it was just kind of like, look, I'm the younger version of me, you know? So, I mean, in a way, when Luke is looking at this, which of course we have conveniently, um, you know, over there, it's
Hmm.
like, oh, who's this? Who's this guy? You know? I mean, I don't know this guy.
Well, it makes once again it makes sense because that's what he returned to his Jedi state. I guess if he's been a Force ghost, like he wasn't a Force ghost as an older man or as an older Anakin. He was a Force
Right.
ghost as Anakin, and that's the Anakin Skywalker that everybody knows
Well,
for the
and
most
you
part.
know, I
So,
have mixed feelings about that though, honestly, because yeah, I know that's the explanation. Like, okay, well, this is the last time he was a Jedi before he turned. But don't forget, he was Darth Vader in that form. See, this is the reason why I get really upset at that
true.
argument, actually, because they're all
Well,
like, "Oh, well, this is when we last saw him as a Jedi or whatever." But it's like, no, the last time that he appeared that way as a young, he was Vader. When he was
true.
redeemed and he turned back as a Jedi, he was the old dude when he came back as a Jedi. See, that's where it makes more sense.
Mm, I don't know. Like I said, I think it's because you're still making the same argument. If you either way you look at it, it just to me it makes more sense because as a young person, he spent more time he spent for the Force Ghost to be a Jedi trick. I mean, not trick, but power. It would make sense that he would return to his former Jedi self. That's like true redemption because it's like you're back to who
Well,
you
then why
were.
didn't Obi-Wan return to it? Because he was a Jedi the whole time? He wasn't. He cut
Exactly,
himself
he
off from
was,
the Force.
but he was still a Jedi though.
Ahsoka,
He
I mean, we don't know what she would appear like yet. but
She's an
she left
owl.
the
I mean,
entire Jedi. Well, yeah, right. But she left the entire Jedi Order. So when does she see? It's when you start like introducing stupid stuff like this that Star Wars
well, when did
begins to
she?
tick me
We
off a
don't.
little bit.
Well, we don't know if she ever spoke. I mean, like she never came back as a.
Yeah, you're right. She still
I mean,
hasn't
that's
really come back as a Jedi. Like even like if
well.
you,
She. Well, I'm
we
just
don't know
saying,
what
like she
happens in
never came.
Ahsoka, but
What I'm saying is, she never. We don't know what she looked like. I mean, we don't know when she died either, or if she's dead.
well, I mean, she's not anywhere to be seen. Granted, I know the original trilogy. Now she's popped up all over the place, but this
Hmm.
is where it's a money making thing. I mean, yeah, they'll put Rosario Dawson in old makeup and push her out in between, like post episode 9 if they think it's going to make the money. But I mean, if we just want to stick within the canon here, I mean, I don't know. It's like, you're right. She hasn't technically died, right? That we've seen. And we don't know if they're going to kill her off in Ahsoka. I mean, we assume that she's not around during the sequel trilogy, but we don't really know that. Now, I don't know. Ronaldo hasn't chatted in yet or
Well,
anything like that, but we don't know, like, because he's the one that usually knows these little things, like, what are their
well,
lifespans?
here's the thing though, and here's the part that we're kind of dawn on me. The Jedi Order is a religion. It's a doctrine that you follow. It doesn't like you. They're just utilizing the light side of the Force. The Force Ghost thing is a light side ability.
Yeah,
So it has nothing really to do with you being a Jedi. It just happens to be a what side of the Force do you choose to use.
yeah.
So conceptually, Ahsoka still could be a Force Ghost because even
Mm,
though she's not a part of the Order, she's still using the light side of the Force, or more of the light side as opposed to the dark.
right, but I'm just saying that the just given that argument, see, this is where I think people try to have it both ways. Given that argument,
Mm,
when
we're having a
he
head to head moment.
when Vader, I know. And who would have thought? It's like
This
we're just
off the
getting to year
first
number
question.
5, right? First like right out the gate, we're having this whole big argument about Force Ghosts. Oh, people are gonna be like, wow, these guys truly need lives, right? It's like, really? This is what you're doing? There are people probably in our lives that would look at this going like, wow, you guys.
Well, they wouldn't want me to expose some of their stuff, so let's
Yeah,
just
that's
keep
true.
it.
Yeah, exactly, right? But I mean, I don't know. In a way, it's like I understand conceptually what Lucas was trying to do when he did that. And I think he was trying to maybe breed some familiarity, right? Because you had this actor that played Anakin Skywalker, whereas Sebastian Shaw just was like played him for like 3 minutes or something. And
Hmm.
so I think what he was doing in his special edition was he was trying to tie the original trilogy with the prequel trilogy, and that's why he did this. But what I'm just saying is that, I mean, if you really want to go deep, and I'm sure that Lucas would start talking about, well, it's fantasy, broad strokes, that kind of thing. And I wouldn't disagree. Like, again, I mean, it sounds like I'm all cranked up over this, but I mean, it kind of works either way. But what I'm saying is that the problem that I have is that the deeper that they go into this stuff, you're going to start to run into these roadblocks because you're going to have a situation where it's going to be one way for this set of characters or a character versus something else. And it just, if your whole idea is, when you were last a Jedi or something like that, I mean, and you can make the argument like, look, the guy was redeemed and like, 10 minutes later he dies. But he was able to become a Force ghost because he did go back to the light side. So that's why that kind of makes sense. If he had remained Vader, then
My
they do have
biggest
Sith
thing is,
spirits, but
well, honestly, like that's not even really the biggest. See, with Vader, the biggest problem that I have with his whole Force Ghost thing, it's not even the fact of which iteration of Vader or Anakin we got, whether it's old man or young Anakin. My thing is, how the heck did he become a Force Ghost?
Well, yeah,
because he
yes. I
he
mean,
never learned the trick. So
right. I mean, that's because
where did
we've
that come
actually we've made the joke. I remember, it kills me to this day every time I talk about it, because we've always made the whole joke, like, after Obi-Wan did his whole thing, him going back to the Emperor, like, hey, you know, um, there's a really strange thing that happened when I fought Obi-Wan. Do you know anything about this? Is this like a thing? Because I went to cut him, but he kind of disappeared and his body was gone, and I don't really know what's going on. And that's a good point. And that's something else that I know we brought up on previous shows, right? It's like he's all smiling with Yoda and Obi-Wan. It's like, well, wait a second. How did you even learn to become a Force ghost? This is like a thing that was handed down from, like, Qui-Gon figured it out, and then he taught Yoda, and Yoda taught Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan taught Luke. I mean, did Luke, like, give him a crash course really quick before he... Because it didn't seem that way when you really watch Return of the Jedi. He's just, let me look on you with my own eyes, and he kind of died, like, right there, like, on camera. It wasn't like an off-camera thing.
Right.
So yes, that would be a good question. So David chats in. He says, all right, number 6. All right, right out the gate, dude. This is like the top 5. You're hitting me with number 6. But all right, whatever. Number 6, Force Destruction. Number 5, Force Choke. Yep, out the gate. Don't be jealous, guys. I know my list is clutch off top. Well, you definitely... I mean, you've right out the gate, you've added a number 6, and we're doing the top 5.
Well, I would say out the gate, you're definitely off your top. So I'll just
yeah. Well, all right. Well, with that said, let me go into my number 5. My number 5 is Force Projection. Actually,
okay.
This is something that's actually been used a few times in the expanded universe. This is the first time. Oh, David says the Master Jedi gets to add a number 6.
Touche.
Yeah, I mean, hey, man, I'm not gonna, as long as the check clears, you can do whatever you want. So the man has a point. All right, moving on.
All right.
So Force Projection, I think, was kind of a cool thing. Now, again, this is another one that actually had its beginnings a little bit in Legends, but obviously was canonized in The Last Jedi, which it's too bad that Ronaldo isn't here right now, because he would just be over the moon that we're just talking about The Last Jedi in a favorable light right now. It's like one of his favorite movies, actually. But I just thought that this was a really cool thing, and I think that it was really nice that they put this in canon, that they actually made this a thing, and also, this is an important one, that they made it to where Luke was the guy, right? Because Luke is basically supposed to be this grandmaster, and he was actually one of the first ones. I mean, they call Yoda a grandmaster, but Luke, in both the expanded universe, and of course they imply this in canon as well, Luke actually eclipses Yoda, and he eclipses everybody. And so I thought it was really nice that they actually gave Luke a force power that nobody had really used and that we hadn't even seen in film. So, yeah, I'm really a big fan of Force Projection. I think it was kind of a cool power.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought... I remember sitting in the theater with you, man, and we were, like, watching this kind of thing happen. And the whole time I'm watching this battle, I'm thinking, like, man, I thought they made Luke so powerful in the Force that not even a lightsaber could even touch him. He was just like, yeah, whatever.
Don't forget, before that, he had just been basically fired upon by the entire might of the First Order. And then he just kind of casually brushes off his shoulder, which I thought was an awesome. Like, that was just the ultimate screw you to Kylo, right?
Exactly. Like, try again.
And I actually thought, because Expanded Universe Luke was this powerful, where he just basically more or less created like a force shield around him, and just absorbed like all these laser blasts or whatever. And I thought, yeah, all right, now we're gonna see something. But then, of course, when the lightsaber went through him, I had basically the same reaction you did. I thought, wow, did they really make it to where, he could just let a lightsaber pass through him? I mean, what's that all about? Right?
Yeah. But it wasn't until like, it never dawned on me until like somebody actually on our show actually mentioned it. I think it might have been Ronaldo when he mentioned the fact that like, okay, he didn't leave any footprints in the salt.
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Well, it's
was
funny.
a giveaway.
Yep. I saw that. Like shortly after The Last Jedi came out, I saw that another YouTube channel brought that up, and I had that whole facepalm moment. I was just like, oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good
Right.
point, actually. Like, they completely... But
Yeah.
that's because... And it's not necessarily our fault that we didn't catch it, because, look, he's holding the stupid dice that all of a sudden became all important to Han Solo, but that's another topic. And, he's kissing Leia on the forehead. It's like, okay, man,
Yeah.
this is a
he had
pretty powerful manifestation.
And he had a blue lightsaber instead of the green one,
Oh,
which I
yeah.
didn't pick up at
No,
first
I didn't
because
either.
I was so invested in the moment that I didn't even think about like, okay, where's his green one?
That's true.
But
Well,
I
but
thought
then
maybe
again,
he found it or built another one or something. I don't know. But just actually do the fourth, when I realized what he was actually doing, they actually showed him floating back in Octo, like,
I
and he was
know.
floating in air. I was just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, man. Like, all right, and then
Yeah,
to
because it
see,
wasn't like he
unfortunately, to
was
see that
floating
it killed
somewhere
him.
right. But it wasn't like he was floating, which I thought was a little... I mean, I get it, but I still thought, okay. I mean, he's a Grandmaster of the Force. It shouldn't, but... Well, right, whatever. I'll accept that. But it was more impressive because it wasn't like he was just on the other side of the planet or something, or in the base doing this. He was
Yeah.
actually in a completely other system. So, yeah, this is crazy. That'd be like me, like, floating in my room somewhere and projecting myself on Pluto. I mean,
Right.
because I don't think people really stop and think about how impressive that power is, and that's why it's my number 5, because it's not only was it cool in the context of Luke, but I mean, we're talking about Force powers, right? Not necessarily the Jedi or Sith who wield them. And when you really stop and think about this as a Force power, it's pretty cool, So again, that's why it's my number 5. All right, let's move on to your number 4. Your number 4 is Force speed. And this is an interesting one too, because this is another one of those that they've implied in the expanded universe a little bit. Because remember, before the prequels, the first one, Phantom Menace, came out in 99. Well, the expanded universe came out in 91. So they had a head start on the novels at this point. And Force speed was definitely one of them. And this is another thing. And I don't know if Lucas... He was known to borrow some concepts from the expanded universe, but I'm not sure if this is one of them, because he was working on this script since, like, I don't know, 95 or something. So it could have just been a coincidence, or maybe Lucas himself said, hey, there's this, like, Force speed thing. Why don't you guys, put that in your books or whatever. But, yeah, I understand why, because it was kind of cool. I mean, when they... the old gas thing, and then they just sped off, and they basically did this a couple of times in the Phantom Menace. What were the other uses? Do you remember any other, like, on screen?
Well, there's only one on screen use of the Force speed, and that's when those droids, this is like, this picture is actually when they were holding their breath, when they were trying
when they held their breath, but eventually but it was during the same battle, though, because the droidicas finally, came and they sped off.
Yeah, because they realized they couldn't penetrate the shield, so they was like, all right, we're out of here. And I thought that was just like, I was like, whoa, I didn't know you could do that. Once again, right. I'm like, all right. I think this, once again, like, my list primarily is predicated on practicality, things that I would use in a day-to-day situation that would benefit me. So, like, you're running late somewhere, or or you need to hurry up and get to someone, or whatever. Like, because I don't know how long. Like, are they the Flash basically for like a limited amount of time? Like, how long can they hold that?
Well, that's also
Or
implied, because it's really wrong. This is not the only, because Yoda's whole fighting thing was another use of force speed, actually.
well, yeah.
So I mean, but again, even that had a time limit, right? So yeah, they really didn't they didn't really do a good job of actually illustrating that, right? Because when you
Hmm.
look at both that, they were just shooting out and just trying to escape a moment, but you don't really know, well, could you have run back to base, or I mean, and then with Yoda, it's kind of like, okay, he's done fighting with Dooku, then he force uses telekinesis to grab his cane, and then he starts hobbling, and everybody's like cracking up in the theater for this. But
Yeah.
what if the duel had lasted longer? I mean, would he have run out of gas eventually? I mean, exactly. It's like when you do force speed, how long can you maintain that?
Well, I think it's probably almost like most any of the powers, especially that's on my list. I think it depends on just how powerful you are in the force. Anyway, will probably
True.
determine
Yeah.
how long you probably could do it.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, that's a good point. Okay. So my number 4 is telekinesis. Some of those, I am proud to say, and I should have mentioned this like right out the gate, but we didn't have a whole lot of duplicates. We had a few, but we actually did vary it up a little bit, so we do have different sets of powers, which you guys have seen so far. So I thought that was nice, because even though the show would still stand if our list was identical, it makes it a little bit more fun if we're bringing different things in the mix. But my number 4, I think, is
Hmm.
telekinesis, because it's not, you could, if I'm approaching things the way you did, from a more practical standpoint, this would probably be higher on my list, because this would be a lot more practical, right? I mean, let's
Hmm.
face it, you're going to really overuse this power. Um,
Oh yeah.
but another favorite force power that, I just should mention is the power to hit the like button, guys. That's a
Nice
force
setup.
power. You got like that? That's a force power you guys could use right now. You just click that mouse, or whatever it is, and the like button is clicked, and we're happy. The algorithm's happy. So if you guys would be so kind as to hit that like button, we'd appreciate it. And of course, if you haven't yet subscribed to us, that's another force power you guys can use. Hit the subscribe button. Why wouldn't you want to watch us twice a week? But yeah, I mean, I think the telekinesis is a really good force power, simply because, again, it's not one of my favorites. It's certainly not one of the flashiest ones. But again, I think when you really stop and think about it, because I think as Star Wars fans, we become jaded, right? We want to see the next like crazy, display of the force or whatever. Like, I want to see people pulling down ships, or moving planets out of orbit, all of which, by the way, was done in the expanded universe, and even to a degree in the sequel trilogy. But I think that people sometimes, that whole familiarity breeds contempt thing. I think that
Hmm.
telekinesis has been around for so long, and it was kind of one of the original powers, that people like forget that, this is kind of a cool thing. I mean, if you really stop and think of in real life, if you had this, you'd be using this a lot. And I think that this goes along with,
Man,
you
every
know,
day I'm using
yeah,
this.
right, like every hour. I mean, you know, it would be, I mean, you would just be using it. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I just think that, and again, it's also one of the most useful within like battle situations, you know, um, I don't know, if you're trying to move like fruit, like Anakin did in episode 2. I mean, you can use it, you're trying to
Hmm.
impress a chick, or you're, like in this case, Yoda is showing Luke the true power of the Force, right? Like, he's lifting an
Hmm.
X-wing out of the water, and, I mean,
Just flying it across the
yeah, I mean,
swamp.
it's great. So now, David has a couple of chats. Let me get these in here real quick. He said, Force speed is a great choice. I'm glad that force speed is a great choice. Great minds think alike. Telekinesis is my number 4 too. That's good since you're doing a top 6 instead of a top 5, but we'll let
I
that
see what they
go.
did there. Great minds in this telekinesis.
Yeah, it's like
Clever.
whatever.
It's clever.
Oh, and Dom joins us. He says my favorite force power is from visions. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, which one is it? I would almost give him $20 if he can name one for. Well, I mean, wait, I should probably back that off because
Yeah.
if it's like
Yeah,
telekinesis, Monday he'll be like, "Hey, where's my $20?" So, okay, I'm gonna retract that offer.
His uncle's gonna give him one.
Yeah, Dom, you give me one scene from Visions, then I'll accept that one. Peter says, I try to use the Force telekinesis when I run out of toilet paper and trying to grab a new roll. You know what, man? I think we've all been in that situation. There are times where,
that's when you want the force speed too. You want everything grabbed that.
Exactly.
I mean, your pants are at your ankles.
there are times when you're caught and you just, that's a good one because I think we've all been in that situation before. Hang on, another Dom one's coming through here. Come on, get up there, buddy. There it is. All right. He says, internet's slow tonight. The scene where one guy gets force pushed off a cliff. That's that's a guess. I don't even think that was the case. You know what? If we liked Visions more, we would probably remember more from it. Because honestly, like season 2, we remember pretty well. Season 1, I don't know. Visions. We have a love-hate. I know one force power you would love is if you could just like Jedi mind trick out, like you will not create any more Vision seasons.
We'll definitely work on Kathleen Kennedy because she seriously is weak-minded.
Oh, ouch. Well, with that in mind, let's go to your number 3. So your number 3 is telekinesis.
Yes, sir. I mean,
all right.
Much to what you already said, I will use this thing all the time because it comes in handy in so many situations. Whether you just, like Peter Griffin, your pants are at your ankles and you need an extra roll of Charmin, or, sometimes oh man, like if your keys or something falls down a place that you can't reach. Okay, cool. I mean, it just has so many just practical benefits. Also,
or what
it can also be very threatening to people because
Yep.
I guarantee you, people would not want to screw with you if they just see you can move stuff like that. They're just like, okay, because now they're gonna wonder what else can he do.
Well, there's also the controlled descents, right? Now, I don't.
Yep.
Technically, that's a telekinesis thing, but I don't think that they've broken that down. Like, I think it's still included in the telekinesis, right? Like, if you jump and you pretty much control your descent, that can come in handy if you're falling. Maybe you want to, force push somebody because everybody thinks of the telekinesis
like
thing
Luke
is
when he fell off, when he was fighting Rey, when he got knocked back, and before he hit his back on the those jagged rocks, he kind of stopped himself.
Absolutely. Peter Griffin chats in. He says, "Was it telekinesis to help Qui-Gon roll that dice? Money, money, money." Absolutely, it was.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point too, actually, because a lot of us actually forget that scene.
I forgot about that one. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's so many little examples of it that because everybody is gonna gravitate towards like the, maybe like grabbing your lightsaber or something like that, like reaching across, like when Luke did it when the Emperor was like, "Oh, you want this, don't you?" and he grabs it, right? And or like when Darth Vader used it to grab the pistol out of Solo's hand after, he futilely tried to shoot him. But yes, some of these more subtle things, like when Qui-Gon raised his, or waved his hand or whatever and, controlled the dice roll and stuff like that. I mean, there's just all kinds of different things that you can use that for that. I mean, I would dare say I'm going to go out on a limb here because both of us had this on the list, right? I had it at number 4, you have it number 3. But would you agree that if you could only choose one power to have, that would probably be the one? I should probably wait till
If I
like
had
the
to choose,
whole list is done, but I
yeah,
mean, yeah, if
yeah,
you could choose the one power though, because I would almost say that out of all the force powers, that is probably the most versatile.
yeah,
Because if you
yeah.
think about it, the other ones are kind of situational in a way.
True. I would probably say if I had to use the most practical thing, yeah, that would be it.
I mean, it covers the widest gamut of situations. Because if you think about it, it's everything from pulling things to you, pushing things away from you, lifting objects, manipulating objects. I mean, there's just a lot to it, right? David says, "Hey, Daryl, we need a telekinesis dealing with those bad kids at school."
Absolutely. Well, actually, one of my other ones will definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know, because the other one that I know both of us duplicated. In fact, let's get to my number 3. My number 3 is actually a little bit different. This is another power that a lot of people forget about is force mimicry. I had to look it up to figure out what it was called, though. But
Hmm.
you see this in a couple of different. This is one of those like subtle powers that is in the films, but you really have to look at it. So, like the one pictured here, this is the one where Obi-Wan pretended to be the Krayt Dragon, and he actually made the Krayt Dragon sound. So he mimicked a Krayt Dragon. There's another thing where Obi-Wan is in like trying to like lower the shields or the tractor beam or whatever, the Death Star, and those two stormtroopers are talking, and he kind of
Hmm.
like does this or whatever, and you hear this like, and it's like imitating a sound.
Like a rock.
Yeah, that's another mimicry sound. He imitated a sound in order to distract them, and there's a couple other examples of it scattered basically throughout the films. But this is another one of those powers that I think is actually underappreciated. I won't say it's totally underrated, really, but I think it's underappreciated by fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially in the Star Wars universe, like in that world, that would that power would make more sense because of all the different types of life forms and things that you come in contact with. So it's almost like a force impression in a way, like an impressionist, So um yeah, I think that would work. But in real life, I don't know how often I would use that.
Well,
You know
I
what I
can
mean?
understand that. I mean, our chats are like our ability to put them up. I don't know. It's kind of slowing down for some reason, but David says his number 3 is Force Lightning, which of course that's one of the more dark side, more offensive powers, but certainly useful. um, and then Dom says seems quite useless, meaning Force mimicry. Telekinesis overshadows that all day. Yes, but you have to understand something too. Is that and then yeah. So now I'm just gonna do this because I can. So yeah, David says that, and then of course Dom comes in with this. Yeah, I mean, again, so Daryl was taking more the approach of, hey, I want to talk about the practical stuff, like stuff that I would use, right? That's kind of
Hmm.
where you're coming from. Where I'm
Yeah.
coming from is more kind of within the context of Star Wars. Like, what was the coolest stuff? Like, what was the
Okay.
stuff that I thought was a really cool thing? Not necessarily practical, although there certainly is practicality to my choices because, I mean, look, there's so many force powers. There's like the ability to talk to animals. There's, just like all these different things that I thought were cool. And I mean, again, and this isn't on my list, but that whole, whatever it was called, I don't remember the exact term they used for it. like force suspension or something. But when Kylo basically suspends that blaster bolt in midair and just basically holds it there and then, releases it later, that was actually pretty cool. That would be practical. That would be useful.
Absolutely.
But, again, and
Especially playing sports.
right? But I will say this, and honestly, it's something that I did think was really cool. Like that, actually, yes. Dom basically says, kind of like a time freeze. Yeah, it's exactly like that. It basically simulates that in a way, but it simulates a time freeze, but you're not really freezing time, you're freezing the object and just holding it there until you decide to release it, And he says, or is that just telekinesis? And that was originally my thing too, because some of these things overlap. I personally would have put that under the telekinesis thing. They did.
That's what
Star Wars itself, right, basically did classify that as a different force power. They classified that as something different than telekinesis, but it sounds like you agree that, yeah,
it's kind of under the same umbrella because, quite frankly,
really
a lot
is.
of things are telekinesis from a certain point of view.
Well, sure, absolutely. There's because you could. Telekinesis is basically a broad-reaching term, right? You could put a lot of these force powers under that. You could even, like even the Jedi mind trick, right? Like the ability to talk to beasts is classified as its own power, but you could really classify that under the Jedi mind trick. I guess it just depends on what you're, what you're doing. But that's why I put the force mimicry thing there, because I thought that was a cool power. I thought it was unique. It's beyond the cliche, and I was trying to get beyond the cliched powers. Stuff that I thought was really cool. Because again, it was not something that I really got overly excited about when I was a kid watching these things. But at the same time, reflecting back on it, these are just like powers. I'm like, okay, well, this is actually a cool thing. I can separate, the personal things. That's why it's
honestly,
one
I
of my
didn't
top
even
ones.
think with this one, it was funny. I never thought that was a force power that he was doing. I didn't know Obi-Wan was doing that. I thought it was just some animal in the background, like in the wilderness, or something just making noise.
Oh yeah, well, and in the special edition, of course, you remember how in the prequel he actually put a crate dragon in there that he was riding in. Was that Revenge? Yeah, it was Revenge of the Sith. He was running away from General Grievous, and Grievous was chasing him on that circular
Was that a crate
cycle.
dragon?
Yeah,
That's awful. It's awfully small.
Yeah, I know. Because
considering like the ones we saw in the Mandalorian.
the ones we saw in the
but that
Mandalorian, exactly. But they
thing's
they
like tremors.
purposely made that sound. Yeah, I know exactly. Well, yeah, that was more like almost like the Tremors thing or the sandworm from Dune or whatever. Yeah, I know. It was just like it was insane. But I guess I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if the people at Lucasfilm even know. It's like, do you guys even consult your own material? Just saying. All right. So where are we at? We're on year number 2, I think. Okay, so year number 2, come
Yes.
on. Look, anybody that's a Star Wars fan is going to have this on their list. I'm sorry.
Yes.
This is like the coolest power ever.
This right here is
yeah,
by far one of my absolute favorites.
And how many times have we imagined ourselves doing this to somebody?
That's why it's one of my favorites. Because
yes.
It's just, this is like when David was talking about those kids and parents. Yes, this is the one I would use all the time. The thing is, and the first time I saw this, like I was completely enamored. Like, okay, now that's cool. You know what I mean? Like you're seeing Obi-Wan use like the mind trick and stuff on the stormtroopers. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yep.
And I don't think we had seen the telekinesis yet when they were able to like pull objects to their hands or whatever. But when Vader did this, I was just like, okay, that's pretty sweet.
Well, then he hits him with that, the whole "I find your lack of faith disturbing."
Yeah, after he bad mouthed
after he does it, And I mean, that's the thing, is that this is, and of course, pictured here is the actual first use of force
Hmm.
choke that we see, right? This is like the first scene in the original trilogy where we actually see this being used. Of course, he uses this quite liberally in The Empire Strikes Back, where
Hmm.
he's even force choking people as a hologram. Like, these people are like, somewhere else. He's basically choking them from his ship, and they're on a planet or something.
Well, yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like when he choked Ozzel on
Yeah.
in Empire, I thought that was great. And
Hmm.
at first, what I thought was happening was I thought Vader was actually controlling his hand to make him choke himself, which would have been cool,
It does sort
honestly.
of, yeah. That would have
But
been
really,
cool.
it was just him trying to breathe, and he was trying to let someone know he was being choked, and everybody knew what was happening, but there's nothing you can really do about it.
That would have
And the
been
fact that
great
Vader
if
is
they had
always so
tried like the
calm,
Heimlich, or, started doing like first aid on him or something. That would
like
have
bring
been
out the Red
awesome.
Cross bag.
And yeah, you're right. Vader was so calm. And of course, David agrees. As you can see, he's
Mhm.
he's quite enamored with that choice. And so, yeah, I mean, absolutely, man. I mean, this is just, look, this is one of the staples of Star Wars. I mean, this, like, whenever you think of the Force, when you generally think of telekinesis, even though the Sith use it all the time, especially Vader. Vader was using
Mhm.
telekinesis all over The Empire Strikes Back. But I mean, you generally think of the Force choke as the Sith power, and telekinesis a little bit as kind of like a light side power. David basically says, "I'm glad Vader wasn't married because this technique would be used often." Well,
He
actually,
did use it on Padme.
he did use it on
Like, he
Padme.
did.
He did. He thought that she was kind of sleeping around or whatever with Obi-Wan. Maybe she was siding with him a little too much, and he force choked
Mhm.
her, which I thought
Yeah,
was a
put some
nice
trouble in
touch.
that tone.
And honestly, that to me, that was really, oddly enough, one of my favorite force choke scenes. And the reason is because the emotional weight that had. I mean, we knew how much Anakin loved Padme, right? I mean, everything that he was doing
Mhm.
was basically for her. And for him to force choke her, that, I don't know, man. There's just like a lot of emotion in that scene for me, you know?
Oh,
But I
yeah.
should
Definitely.
probably go, because my number two is also force choke. So I mean, since we're talking about force choke, I might as well roll in. I mean, it's obviously, this is a really cool power. It's both of our number two. I think it's also quite interesting that we both had it in the same position on our lists. But
I
what
know, right?
I wanted to do, though, because I knew that whole Mahdi thing was like one of your favorite scenes, and that was also one of mine. But I also had to give a shout out to when Luke used it, because a lot of
Mhm.
times we think of the Force choke as a Sith power, but actually the Jedi used it too. Not often, of course. But when Luke
Right.
did it in Return of the Jedi, I thought it was so awesome, because it is so, just, I get like identified with Vader, and maybe some of the other Sith too. But I mean, Vader is really the one that we see use it. Um,
Especially, that's his kid, and at this point, because you remember when we last left off, he did the whole "I am your father" thing, and the fact that he was choking everybody left and right in Empire. So to see Luke start the movie off choking people, and he's got this black cloak on, I mean, you definitely think that
yeah. Well, here's the thing,
he's gone
though.
over.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that was one of the main. I think that was what they were trying to do. They were trying to make you question whether or not, he's like wearing all black. He's coming in, he's
Mhm.
very silent, you know? Um, I don't know. I mean, I just think that it was different. It was different enough. Now, I have to get this in because David actually brings up a force power, which, by the way, people don't realize it's a real one. Ray kind of used it by accident, like she does everything else, because she's so amazing, right? Uh, he says psychometry is my number two, and basically what this is it's like, it's the ability to. So basically, what you're doing is you're using the force to learn information or whatever off of an inanimate object. In the case of Rey, she kind of did this, probably not on purpose, but when she touched that like Vader's lightsaber and got all those visions
Mm-hmm.
and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not visions, as in the series that we hate.
Dom.
Yeah, just kind of want to put that out there now in case anybody wants to capitalize on that comment. But when she basically had that Force vision, I'm trying to remember if there was any other, because Rey used it too. Also, like when she was getting information, like she was touching certain things at Kylo's in his chambers or whatever, and getting stuff. But I don't really remember offhand anything in the original trilogy or the prequels. I mean, look, I'm sure in the Clone Wars they probably did something like that. Do you remember anything? I'm gonna take that as a hard no.
Well, you know what? We never saw it, but they kind of made mention. Well, what was that episode? It was an episode of Clone Wars. This is when they met Quinlan Voss, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And they were tracking the little hut that kind of
That's Stinky.
no, that's Stinky. The
Okay.
one that stole them initially.
Oh, right.
The very Elton John-ish looking hut.
Yeah, the little
But
gay hut.
Yeah, but the thing is, Quinlan Voss was actually, he's kind of a tracker, so he was using things like in the area to kind of like, okay, he was here. It wasn't that long ago. He was kind of using
you're
it to
right.
place
Yeah, that was
where he was.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess you can. Well, but again, I'd have to look at the million Force powers there are, but there were like different. And see, that's the problem. There was like a lot of overlapping ones because like Force tracking could be one, for instance. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know, but yeah, I would certainly qualify that. So I don't know. All right, let's get to our number ones. So your number one is Force communication, which there's all kinds of examples of this. Obviously, the most obvious one was that whole they were a dyad in the Force, and Snoke kind of put Kylo and Rey together, and they were able to communicate in very vivid ways. Almost what some people might consider ridiculously vivid as time went on. I don't know.
Well, my biggest one, it wasn't even the Rey and Kylo thing.
Well, I didn't
It
think
was
so, but I had to
really
find a picture to
Luke
look.
and Leia. It was
Well,
Luke
yeah.
and Leia when they were talking to each other in the Empire.
Yep.
When he was like, "Hear me, Leia," and then she was like, "Luke," and just
Well, and then
the
also
fact that
Vader and
was
Luke,
able to
right?
talk to, Vader being able to talk to Luke, and it's like, if you, how cool would that be? It's like you don't even need a cell phone at that point. You just
That
kinda
could be a
just
little
reach out.
invasive, though. That's the only problem I
Yeah.
have with that power. Because that's almost like having a cell phone that's always just like you could just start talking, like nobody's answering. It's like I don't have to
Well,
answer
true.
my phone or text. It's almost like you just start talking to me out of the blue, and maybe and there
Well,
might be evasiveness about that one.
it comes in handy in an emergency,
Well,
situation. And I
yes,
think
of
that's
course.
when I would honestly use it. It's like, okay, I don't want to talk to you, when you're in the shower or something, like, it's not that type of party. But, if, let's say,
Well, that's why I thought when Ray was talking to Kylo and he had his whole shirt
I was
off.
like,
I'm like, all right, man, come on now.
see, and that's the thing is, one thing to talk to somebody, but they could actually see each other. That was different. And I think that became I think that was the whole dyad thing, because essentially they're one and the same person. It's like they're the same, they're like twins almost, but they were split. So they could kind of see and feel where each other were almost at at any given moment.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. I mean, it's kind of weird. Like I almost like it better in the examples you gave, right? The whole, Luke was able to reach out to Leia because she was force sensitive, and that was like foreshadowing that whole thing. And then, of course, when Vader was able to communicate directly with Luke, it was a little less creepy, I guess. I mean, it was a little bit more, I thought, grounded and tempered versus this whole like dyad in the Force where you're, because again, even though it made for a really fantastic scene, when it got to the point to where, she's handing Kylo a lightsaber, like just reaching behind her back, and then it's like, okay, you're gonna have to explain a little bit more on how this is working, because even that whole scene where Kylo and Rey, like Rey was in his chambers in the ship, and he was on the planet still, and obviously Vader's helmet fell and shattered, and he saw that on the planet. I mean, there's just like all this like physical manifestation between this, where I think if they had left it to just straight up communication, maybe they could see each other, that would have been better. But I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to show how strong of a dyad they were in the Force. But I don't know, it was almost like, look, you guys are taking a bunch of liberties without really explaining this stuff to us, and there's no frame of reference. It's not like you're referencing a previous film or book or comic or anything, it was just whatever. So, I mean, were you a little bit more on board, since this is your number one? I mean, were you more on board with more like the Luke and Leia, the Vader and Luke, like that version of it, or even,
that was more like, that's more my version with it. I'm more old school with it. I prefer that over, oh, I can see where you are and that type of thing. I think that's, like you said, it's more intrusive.
Yeah.
But in a situation where you really need someone, it's like, hey, I can communicate with you. I mean, let's just say, heaven forbid, but this is an extreme circumstance. Say you're kidnapped or whatever. I mean, there you go. I could reach out like, hey, man, I need some help. So,
Well, and the thing is, though, it's like, who are you gonna, you hope that you can reach out to somebody that can actually do something about it. Because I mean, if you think about it,
right.
if you're bringing this more into the real world, right, and you're, you have these force power. I mean, are there other people like you on Earth that have force
Oh, of
powers
course,
too?
I have to find somebody else that's like me,
You
because
know,
we're about to be the super friends at this point.
I mean, because the point is, what I'm saying is like, okay, you can contact somebody that might be able to call the cops or something, but that's no guarantee they're gonna find you. I mean, I guess it's better than nothing. And I don't want to
hmm
read too much into it and analyze it to death. David brings up Force Enlightenment. His number one is Force Enlightenment. I'm wondering if he's like looking this stuff up, because Force Enlightenment, the last time I heard that one was in one of the
It's in the
Knights of the
presence
Old
of your old
Republic. No,
master.
it was one of the Knights of the Old Republic games. Um, it was like, I don't remember if it was one or two, but it was one of the two. I remember that. And it
It was
basically,
it's force woke.
well, yeah, right. Force Enlightenment, I mean, at least from what I remember it being, was like it would take, like whatever your strongest attribute is or whatever, and it would just like crank it up or something. It was almost like whatever you were good at, it would give you like the advanced level or something like that. It was,
It's like an amplifier,
yeah, it
basically.
was kind of, yeah, exactly. It was kind of like and it wasn't a really super popular power, really. It was, yeah, exactly. It was just like one of those kind of things, where you just, so David, I have to think, given some of the other questions and other things that you've had, that you're just looking this stuff up. Now,
Context clues.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you've advanced in the fandom enough that you're starting to, I don't know, maybe you're playing the game right now, whichever one it is. I don't know. I just think that
Eric has
maybe,
questions.
yeah, I have more like suspicions, but that's all right. He goes on to say, wow, Force woke, good one. Yeah, that would be an interesting power, wouldn't it? Okay. So now my number one's actually cooler than this one. My
Dark
number one
Jedi
is
matter. Okay.
much cooler than this one. My number one, like, right? My number one is Force Lightning, but not just Force Lightning, red
The
Force
red one.
Lightning. the red force lightning. Not because I'm working with the red cameras lately. That has nothing to do with it, actually. Yeah, right. No, red force lightning is something. So, supposedly in canon, Vader actually, I think that's Darth Nihilus right there that we see in the picture. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's Darth Nihilus that's using it. It was really hard to find photos of it to even represent it. I remember there was a comic that Vader used it against Palpatine or something. So in canon, there's basically like different colors of force lightning. Well, I don't even actually probably saying in canon is a stretch. In the Star Wars universe, whether it's expanded or canon, you have like the bluish lightning, which of course we're all familiar with. That's the one that Palpatine, that's the one that Dooku, that's the one that all those guys use. That's the one that everybody, whenever people say force lightning, that's what they refer to. And that's really powerful. Now, there has been other instances like the Night Sisters actually use green, like they conjured up a force lightning thing and they imbued it with their magic or something weird like that, and they used it and it came out green. There's yellow force lightning, which I forgot can't remember what the origin is on that one. If anybody knows, put in the comments or chat or whatever. Then, of course, I think there was another situation where they had like black and white lightning too. But I don't really super recall the origins of that. That's kind of like an offshoot. But red.
So Michael Jackson, that's where it came from.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe it was the Dangerous album.
Yes, there you go. Well, it wouldn't surprise me. Well, he'd be able to afford it. If anybody can use it, I believe Michael Jackson could. But red force lightning is more powerful than the lightning that the Emperor used, and you have to be of a certain power to actually even conjure it. So this is a force lightning that there was a comic book that Vader actually used it, and of course, the conventional wisdom was that Vader couldn't use any of it because it would short out his whole suit. But he somehow, I don't know, conjured this stuff. So to me, that was always fascinating to me. It was always fascinating that there was a force lightning out there that was more powerful than the one that the Emperor used. Because, let's face it, Palpatine was pretty adept with it. And then, of course, even looking at this photo, Luke, expanded universe, like super overpowered Luke at this point, he's using it. So the fact that there was actually force lightning that was like even beyond that was always just a very cool thing to me. But I don't know. That would be probably like my top 5. And again, I'm sure, and you probably feel the same way. Look, a lot of this stuff could be reordered given the day. I mean, but these are, I think it's safe to say with both of us, you were taking it more from a practical perspective. I was taking it more from a, hey, this is really cool perspective. So, I think it was good that both of us actually did that, honestly. Because I think when you look at it, if we were both taking it from the same perspective, I don't know if it would be as interesting of a conversation. But the fact that we were actually looking at this from a different view, I think that was like lightning. Speaking of force lightning.
Think about force lightning.
Yeah. I guess we're about to get a pretty brutal storm. I'm glad we're still streaming right now, actually, given that blast that hit.
As long as it's not red, we should be all right.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's not red lightning, so I think we're good. But yeah, I think that it was really nice that both of us were taking this from a different perspective, because I think it makes for a more interesting conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. With there being so many force powers and force abilities and whatnot, there's a bunch that could have been on my list. Mind Trick was definitely one.
Yeah, I flirted with that too.
If I had an honorable mention, that would be it.
Or if you were doing a top 6 like David.
Right, exactly.
That'd be your number 6. I could actually put that as a number 6. But it's true. I mean, if
Yeah.
you actually, like I said, if you guys, like, as a fun exercise right now, those of you who, maybe don't have anything else to do, uh, go to StarWars.com, look up force powers. It's insane how many of them there are. I mean, it's crazy. It's like just like a gang of them. I'm looking through all of them, like I said at the beginning of the show. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. Because, a lot of times you live with this stuff for so long, you're just thinking in your head, like, okay, here's the ones that occur to me right away. Well, what if I just forgot about some really cool thing that maybe I read in a book or something somewhere? So I wanted to make sure that I really was giving an accurate representation. And, I was really shocked to see how many different force powers there were. Because if you think about what's been given to us in the films, even those of you who have read the novels, both the canon novels and the expanded universe ones, I mean, there's just like only so many that they have, right? I mean, another telekinesis example in the expanded universe was when Luke basically was in prison and he had his lightsaber. His lightsaber was on some table or something somewhere. And he basically used the Force from his little prison cell to lift his lightsaber, ignite his lightsaber, and then guide the lightsaber all through the ship and just like killed all these people. That's how powerful Luke was in the Force. But that's a cool version of telekinesis that I think is beyond just somebody, flicking their wrist and a handle moves or something. I mean, a lot of times when we think of telekinesis, we think of the more mundane, everyday uses of it. But there were some really cool uses. Oh, man. So, oh, yeah, he's on StarWars.com. Honorable mention, Beam of Light. And David. Beam of Light is another cool one, actually. That's one that was used, I want to say, I don't know if it was the games or if it was a comic. It was one, so basically the Jedi could basically come together and just like form this concentrated beam of light, almost like, say, like the Death Star laser, but a little bit more powerful than that. It might have been an expanded universe thing. I remember the power. I just don't remember the appearance.
It's probably when Rey used it against when she said, "I'm all the Jedi" or something stupid.
Oh, well, yeah, no. This is definitely like this is like something totally different. In fact, if anything, this would actually be. Like I said, I don't remember exactly where it was used, but this would be something more comparable to like what the High Republic would do. And that's another thing, there's a lot of High Republic stuff that we didn't cover either. There's like when Avar Kriss can hear all the Jedi because of like unique song and something. I mean, that's technically a force power, So I mean, there's like a lot of different force powers and uses that we couldn't get. But before we start giving our final thoughts and our wrap up or whatever, first of all, thanks to everybody that actually has hit that like button so far. If you haven't yet done so, please like this video. Normally, I don't like to beg for likes, but it does help the YouTube algorithm. And, I know a lot of times I'm guilty of it too, right? I watch YouTube like 90% of the time. And it's like, I've been trying to get better myself of when I like a video of actually hitting the like button. Because here I say this like every week on the show, and like I don't do it myself, except rarely when I think about it. And it's not even that hard to do when you're watching, on TV. You just kind of like move your remote up and scroll over the like. So that would be appreciated. If you haven't yet subscribe. Join our Discord channel. Because like I said, you guys play Call of Duty with me. I'll probably be on tonight, actually. There's a Call of Duty channel on there. There's all kinds of Star Wars stuff on there. There's, channels dedicated to the people who actually do these packages. If you want to do the $5 a month Padawan, the $10 a month Jedi Knight, the $25 a month Jedi Master, or buy me a coffee, there's a special Discord channel for you guys. And, every little bit helps. It helps us grow the channel, expand. But look, the bottom line, if you guys are watching these videos, you're liking them, you're subscribing to the channel, that's great. The other thing on the buy me a coffee thing too, you don't necessarily have to do a package if you just want to give a one-time, hey, here's some, like a tip. That's why it's called buy me a coffee, right? You're just kind of taking $1 or $2 and say, hey, like what you guys are doing. That's cool too. Anything that you guys do helps. We also, like I said, want to thank our Twitch subscribers because, we only started streaming on Twitch again maybe in the last month or so. And already we got people watching us on Twitch. So we appreciate, Bruce and some of the other people that have chatted in and talked to us on Twitch. So if you're going to wrap this up, this whole like force power discussion, what would you say your final thoughts are on this whole thing?
Final thoughts. I want all these abilities.
Oh yeah, I know, and that's such a vague question too. It's kind of like.
But yeah, I think going forward, I think even in Star Wars, as they continue to make new content, whether it's excuse me on Disney Plus or in the future films coming up, I love the Force abilities, and I think I want there to be context, and I want there to be I want them to be grounded in something, like we said about, with Leia and Luke, their force communication, like that was more grounded. Rey and Kylo was a little bit more extra,
No, I
not
get
to
it,
say,
man.
but then also I want them to be able to show, the devastation that the force can actually do, when you have somebody really powerful. We saw that a lot in the Clone Wars shorts, those little 5 to 15 minute, episodes that we would of the animated shows we used to get, where
Yeah, people have
you had
forgotten
somebody
about
like
those
Mace,
actually.
yeah, like somebody like Mace Windu or Yoda, like who'd be like in a battalion full of droids, and they would just wave their hand and they would all go flying.
Yep.
Like when you're talking about people who are grandmasters of the Force, that's what you're expecting to see, So, um, yeah, I would love to see more stuff like that, but when it's in context.
Well, and I have to say, it pains me almost to say this, but I think that's one of the things that Visions gets right is that they show us within context, and again, that of course is if the episode itself is in context. That's been a problem
Mhm.
sometimes. Although this last season, I have to say, they they did actually provide context for each of these episodes. They gave us a lot of the examples of what we're talking about today. Some of the force powers that we talked about. I think they did a really good job at showcasing them in unique ways, and I'm going to echo your sentiments there that I would like to see that. I also think the one thing, and I have to say it, I will give credit to the sequel trilogy in one respect, and that is they made the Jedi powerful again. When you had
Mhm.
Rey reaching up and pulling, like holding a ship in place, and then Kylo's like, and then they're doing this tug of war thing, but this like the ship that's trying to take off.
Mhm.
That's something that we hadn't really seen in anything else other than the video games. And then, of course, Rey, overdoes it a little bit and shoots lightning at it and blows it up. But again, these are powers that we would expect to see from beings that have these kind of abilities. And
Mhm.
especially if you're going to show like there's these grandmasters, right, in the Force. Well, we need to see grandmaster level abilities then.
Mhm.
You can't just limit these guys because in a lot of cases we don't even see a whole lot of differences between these guys, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, other than the fact that everybody is like scared to death of them. So, I think that that's definitely something. Um and then David says, "Daryl, I kept my word. I bought you 3 coffees." Well, thank you, David.
Thank you,
We
David.
definitely appreciate it. It would just, you know, because of that now, you've earned goodwill. You want to do a top 6. That's totally cool. 3 coffees, A. That's actually an amazing thing. Were they all $1 though? Just saying. Well, I can't really say anything. He's like our Jedi Master.
Yes.
I can't tease him too
He,
bad, right?
he's on the council. You have to leave him alone.
Yeah, he is. He's kind of like the head-to-head sugar daddy. It's like supporting the channel, man. That's cool. Whatever.
Dog. Bye, Eric. Bye.
And we're equal opportunity. Anybody else wants to sign up for the sugar daddy packages, we're good with that. I mean, look,
great.
The channel needs to grow, guys. Just saying.
Jedi Knight,
yeah,
Master
exactly.
Sugar Daddy. Oh my God, get me out of here.
Oh, that would be awesome. I'm like this close to actually creating that as a category, right? That'd be like the $50 a month, right? You're like the ultimate. Oh, it's kind of like, all right, I'm getting Slave Leia vibes on this one. So I think with that, we're going to pretty much wrap this thing up. So Monday, the next one is, we've confirmed this, right? It's the Journey to Ahsoka Part 1. Is that the next one? You might want to look that up before I make this big announcement.
Double checking.
Yeah, double check that, because, I'm not used to us.
Oh, no. Actually not. No.
See? That's why we rehearse.
Yep, that's
as Michael Jackson would say. Well, what is it?
It's actually Master versus Padawan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was the one that I initially wasn't sure what was going on. So, let me explain this so that way you can correct me in case I botch it up again. So, this is the one where pretty much we're going to take, like, you got, say, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, right? You have Qui-Gon was the master, Obi-Wan's the apprentice. The question that we're going to be posing Monday is, who is actually the better Jedi? Like, you look at, okay, yes, Qui-Gon was the master, and yeah, Obi-Wan was the apprentice, but when you really look at their entire careers, right, who is actually the better Jedi among those two? And so,
exactly.
The question, though, is, are we going to present this? I love producing live, by the way. Are we going to present this like, are we going to present maybe a particular group of these guys, or are we just, is this like free form?
1-to-1.
Huh?
It's 1-to-1. So it's 1-to-1. So it's basically, I'm going to pick a master and apprentice, or a Padawan and the Jedi Knight. Jedi Master. And then we're just going to put those two up head to head, and we're just going to basically build out each character, and we're going to come to a conclusion who was the better Jedi.
All right. So with my old slow mind here, basically you're going to choose a master and apprentice, a single master and apprentice that we're going to present to everybody, and we're just going to go through them ad nauseum.
So, like you gave the example, Obi-Wan versus Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
All right. Looking at their careers, what they've done, their force abilities, lightsaber skills.
Well, my question
decisions
is,
that they've made.
I get that, but my question is, are they the only ones that we're going to deal with? Are you going to bring up, like, how many of these guys are we going to bring up on Monday?
Oh, you mean, okay, I get what you see.
Yeah, like how many pairs, right?
How many pairs?
Yeah. By the way, this is what happens on. If you guys join the Discord, we would talk about things like this. But right now, we're talking about it live on the air with you guys.
Right now, I say we just stick to one. Let's just stick to one, because I'm sure, like,
and Qui-Gon then, or you want to do a different pair,
or sure, we could do Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon.
All right, there you go.
That'd be a good one. There we go.
Well, I mean, that would probably, to me, because I mean, you could do like Obi-Wan and Luke, but that wouldn't be as, I mean, to me, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon would probably be compelling, because you also have Qui-Gon, who's a little bit more of a loose cannon, but very powerful, and then you have Obi-Wan, who's a little bit more by the book, and he's powerful, so that might actually be the one. And we could talk about the Master and Apprentice, because after all, there was a book that was actually based on those two, called Master and Apprentice. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think that's the only book we ever reviewed on the show.
Yeah, because we finished.
Like, yeah, because we both finished it at roughly the same time. Because for those of you guys who don't know, like over the years, one of the things that we thought of doing was, hey, let's do some book reviews. But, every time we would try it, it's kind of like, all right, where are you at? Well, I'm on page 50. Well, I'm on page like 300. And we would just never really, finish them. And it got to be a little weird. And it's like, okay, well, by the time we're able to do this review, it's like 6 months after the book came out. So, I mean, hey, if we get more support from you guys and we can become full-time YouTubers, you can get stuff like that. But as long as we got the whole job situation going, it ain't happening. So maybe we did do comic book reviews, though. Remember when we did the whole High Republic thing?
Yep.
And the other thing we got to do, and now I'm thinking about this, we never finished our Bad Batch review from the last season. We quit something like 4 or 5 episodes. So maybe that's something that we could do. That could also be like content. That would actually be a good content for our Padawan
Discord.
Jedi Master. Yeah. Like our actual paid memberships. Because you can watch the Bad Batch reviews that we did up until like episode 9 or 10. But then our actual members could get, the rest of them or something. So we are starting to work out a lot of this stuff now to where we have everything that we're promising in these packages in place. But again, join our Discord, chat with us there. I check it constantly, so there is somebody to talk to. I'll probably be on Call of Duty tonight, so you can join that channel too. All right, so until Monday, we're going to be doing the Master and Apprentice thing. It's going to be Qui-Gon versus Obi-Wan. So that should be really interesting. And hopefully you guys can join us Monday night at 8 o'clock. Probably, right? Because tonight we were on at 9. But we've been good lately. All right, just watch the community tab. We'll update you guys if there's any changes in the schedule. So thanks again for joining us both on YouTube and on Twitch. Until Monday night, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.